having read your book and having listened to your TV interview, I would like to share your research results here for my newspaper. I'd like to do this interview. Starting with your research, how many people, how many years, how many countries, and the difficulties you had during your research. Could we start with the whole episode of the research, please?
I know in your email to me, one of the questions which bore on that is, how did I get started studying politicians and leaders, and why?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, my interest came about as a result of a prior study in a prior book that I did called The Price of Greatness. And in that book, I was looking into what is the relationship with greatness and mental illness. Is there any, to achieve something great, was there some kind of mental difficulty and that kind of thing? And the research I did, I looked at 18 different professions. There were 8 that were related to the arts, such as dancing, fiction writing, prose writing, poetry, and so forth. And then there were 10 other professions. Actually, I looked at there are over 1,000 individuals in all these different major professions, these 18 professions, and compared them, made some conclusions. One of these professions happened to be politicians, what made for great politicians. I found that of all the different professions, there were no specific scales or objective means that I could judge their contribution by. With artists, you go by painting, sculpture. With athletes, you go by performance in sports. What was it that made politicians great, or how could you say that about any of them? There was nothing tangible there. They relied on other people to do things for them rather than do it themselves. And so I was puzzled about how do you evaluate a leader? What criteria can you use? In my prior study, this book, Price of Greatness here, I developed a scale called the Creative Achievement Score. Some of the items there could be maybe used for political greatness, but it wasn't adequate. In any event, having done that, and having done that with about, as I say, over 1,000 individuals here, over a 30-year period from 1960s to the 1990s, I then decided to focus on political leaders. And I needed to be able to do it. I needed to begin to develop a scale 2, a political greatness scale, and for a while wondered, how do I go about this, so forth. And then I had an insight. People who, throughout history, people have a sense of who is great. There are, without making any judgments, you look at Julius Caesar, you think about Alexander the Great, you think about a whole variety of them. Some things here, some notes I made, but anyway, so what I did was to, and I was also aware that if you go to encyclopedias, the most seems to be written about these great people, more so than those who make lesser contributions. So I developed the political greatness scale, and this involved 11 different items, and this enabled me at some point to sense how great a ruler, or how not great or ordinary a ruler was. And I found that the extent of greatness here correlates with the amount written about these rulers in major encyclopedias and so forth. It's almost a cultural thing. People know or sense who is great, even though they don't particularly use certain criteria. In any event, that's how I got started on it. And the more I got into it, the more caught up and enthusiastic I became about the studies. What I decided to do was, I realized an ambitious plan was to look at all the rulers of the 20th century. That was roughly 1970 or something, a little less than 2,000 rulers of all the countries in the world, and that was about 200, 199 I think, about 200. And to collect whatever information I could about them. There are certain basic information such as the years they ruled, countries, the type of rule it was. But that wasn't sufficient. I was interested in getting to know the rulers better and some more in-depth information. And I was fortunate enough, I had a named professorship at the time, and had a independent source of income coming in from this donation that this individual made. So I had some money for research and could hire several people to help me with this. And I was able to get sufficient detailed information, but I believe it was 377 of the almost 2,000 rulers. So there's a bank of information on all rulers, but rather limited, and there's very detailed information I was able to get on, as I said, about 377. So that, and then on that basis, I gathered the information, collected it, looked at it, tried to understand it, and wrote the book.
Of course, your book is very detailed and it's very academic also. Here I want to focus on Turkey and Atatürk, who you mentioned among one of those nearly 2,000 leaders. You chose two leaders from Turkey to research. One was Abdülhamit and the other was Atatürk. Atatürk is a leader who left a very big mark in our history. But why Abdülhamit? Why you chose as a second person Abdülhamit?
Why did I choose him?
Him from Turkey.
Because he fit the criteria. As I said, I want all the leaders who were headed up the country in the 20th century. Abdülhamit, to my recollection, was in office from or at least ran the Ottoman Empire from, I believe, 1876 or 78 to 1908.
Yeah.
So he was a ruler in the 20th century.
Long term.
And a long-term ruler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because from 1908 to 1920, there were other sultans. But the reason why you chose Abdülhamit is the length of...
The length and the information available on him. Some of these other leaders are in the data bank on the 2,000 rulers.
But one of those out of the 377 where you couldn't gather information.
I cannot gather detailed information on some of those other rulers there. I was able to gather detailed information, I believe, on 3 rulers in one was Abdülhamid II and İsmet İnönü. He was also.
İnönü.
Yeah. So he was also.
Yeah.
And Atatürk. So there were 3 rulers that are included in the 377 sample that I looked at. Yeah.
And what would you say about a comparison between Atatürk and Abdülhamit?
Well, there was major differences. Abdülhamid was perhaps a long-term ruler, as I've said. Also, Atatürk was from 1922 to 1936 or 38, something like that. But Abdülhamid did nothing new. He ruled, the longer he ruled, the more dictatorial he became, eventually becoming very paranoid, having spies all over the place and uncovering plots. I guess he also was busy having children. I think he had somewhere between 30 and 40. I don't recall how many, but that would keep him pretty busy with his harem. And he really did not do very much for Turkey other than to preserve tradition.
Okay.
I mean, are there aspects of Abdul Hamid that you feel contributed at all to Turkey's status, or I didn't see anything. If anything, he was a restraining, inhibiting force.
I agree with you. Among the intellectuals in Turkey, Abdul Hamid doesn't have a big place in our history. As you just summarized here, he became more and more of a dictator and restricted, and he had spies everywhere.
Right.
And he did more harm to the country than good. And he was the heir of the Ottomans. So he didn't try to take the Ottoman Empire to a better point, but he only thought of his own self. He was selfish. We think along the same lines.
Yes.
These are the reasons why the Ottoman Empire collapsed eventually, because of selfish sultans not thinking about the country. Then comes the First World War and the decimation of the Ottoman Empire. There is a treaty called Sevres, which was signed near Paris, which basically erased Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, off the map.
Right.
And then comes Atatürk after that, an independence war. So if we get to Atatürk, which is my main focus here,
Yes.
because I am a member of this generation who grew up with a lot of the values of Atatürk, respecting him, looking up to him. He's our hero, in a way. You say in your interview that you were impressed by him. So are we. We are very impressed by him. Could you tell me the points that you were impressed with Atatürk or his leadership, which is the main focus here?
Well, I think to do it, I did not know when I started the research that he would end up with the highest score on the political greatness scale. So, and this was, these ratings were not just done by me, but by others too, and with a high degree of reliability in terms of the general assessment. And I think to do that here, I'll give you I also print this off
Thank you.
for you here and invite you with me, and perhaps your son too, here, we'll rate Atatürk on political greatness together here.
Okay.
Okay? And see what kind of score we come up.
Okay.
On the left here, let's do Abdul Hamid, all right?
Okay.
And we'll compare them.
Okay.
You could also maybe, if you wanted to, which if you wanted to, you might even, you might want to rate Erdogan too here.
Oh, yes.
At some point. But anyway, we'll
Yeah.
right on the left column, we'll put Abdul Hamid,
Okay.
and on the right, we'll put here
Atatürk.
Atatürk. Okay. One of the headings. This is more detailed in the book. It's making something from nothing.
Yeah.
And there are 4 levels. Okay. They did not create a new country. They just came into an existing one. An active participation in the creation or liberation of the new country is number 1. Number 2 is one of the several leaders in the creation or liberation of the new country. And 3, get the 3, if you're the leader of the struggle to create or liberate a new country. Okay, so in the left-hand column here, let's see, where would you put Abdul Hamid?
0.
0, okay. Where would you put Atatürk?
3.
3, okay, we'll put 3.
Okay.
And Oliver, you participate too, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did the second one.
Okay. More than before. In other words, while under the leadership, did they lose territory? They neither won nor lost territory is number 1, the default. They added new territory during the reign, but then lost much of it. Or number 3, they gained new territory. Let's read Abdul Hamid.
As far as I know, Abdulhamid didn't add any more territory. He might have lost some, but I do not know about that.
He lost
Lost.
some. Okay.
He did.
Balkanlar. The Balkans. He lost the Balkans.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and Atatürk, what are we going to give him?
Well,
Yeah.
if we,
Great.
if
Yeah.
well, given that he's created something out of nothing, I think
Out of
that's
nothing? Yeah, so
that's a 3, I guess.
give him 3. Okay. Incidentally, as an aside, you're welcome here. Let's put here, but let's go back. Let's put your current leader there. Erdogan.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're something. Okay, where would we put? Where would you put him now? Something from nothing. What's he done? Active.
That
0.
takes us 0, I guess.
0. Okay.
He's inherited the country, so.
Okay. More than before. Has he lost territory? Neither won nor lost territory. Added new territory, but lost it, or gained new territory.
I'd say lost territory.
He lost territory. What did he lose?
We have some very tiny islands in the Aegean Sea,
Okay.
very close to Turkey, like say on a small motorboat 15 minutes away, whereas from Greece 15 hours away.
Okay.
And he's kind of let the Greeks have those little tiny islands.
So we're going to put 0 there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go on now. Staying power. Here. Abdul Hamid, less than 2 years to all the way, it goes from 0 to 5, more than 16 years.
He's got more than 16, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
he'd
we'll
get
give-
a 5 here.
He'll get a 5. Okay.
Erdogan would get a 5,
Yeah.
and Atatürk would get a 5.
So they all get 5.
5.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the second page. Military prowess. Lost the war because for all great, you can't be a great leader unless you fight.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
everyone that's listed as great in the past have been warlords at some point. Yeah. But okay, we'll come to that. Okay, lost a war, or there's no war. This is number 1. Number 2, avoided defeat in war, but no clear-cut victory. Okay, or won a war. Okay, Abdul Hamid,
0.
0.
Yeah.
Lost the
war.
war.
0. Okay, Atatürk,
Atatürk would be 3.
Yeah, he won a war. He won quite
won
a few,
war,
actually.
that's right. And
Erdogan,
Erdogan,
I think that's a 2.
That's my sense.
He's still going on. The Syria
Yeah.
stuff is still going on.
It's still, yeah, see, we don't have his full reign
Yeah.
Yeah.
yet. At this point in time, what you would say, you
The
say
two.
no war, number 2, right?
He'd probably end up losing, I'd say.
Okay.
That's
But
gonna
let's say 2 for now.
Let's give him
Yeah.
that, okay? Okay, social engineering.
Okay.
0, none. 1 is laws have with
No
precedent. Yeah, and you know what I mean by social engineering, to manipulating to have, to bring about new, okay, selected laws with no precedent, number 2. 3, general laws with no precedent. Okay. Abdul Hamid.
As far as I know very little about it, but as far as I can say, it's going to be either none or it's going to be introducing quite repressive laws.
Number 1.
Number 1.
I think that's what he got, yeah. You go with that? Okay,
Okay.
okay. Atatürk.
Well, he made the he made the country secular, so
Okay.
it's going to be general laws with no precedent. Yeah, that's a 3.
Great.
Yeah.
3. Okay. Erdogan. At this point.
Laws with precedent, but it's just about getting into 2 selected laws with no precedent. I guess, but I can't really tell.
Selected laws with no precedent, you want to, or what do you think?
Turkey is divided right into 2. For the secular group, his social engineering is a bad one, taking Turkey back.
Right.
But for the other half, or maybe 1/3 of the group, or maybe 1/5, we don't know, for a minority, he's done good social engineering by pushing more Islam into the society.
Now, but, okay, it says with no precedent. Okay. In other words, new novel laws. Atatürk added, freed up people from this and that, and changed the language
Yeah.
here. It went, from Arabic to Roman. I mean, total. Anything precedent you see, no precedent with
Yeah.
Erdogan.
Okay. Yeah.
Where
I'd
would
say
you get?
0 then.
Okay, what?
I'd say 0, none with Erdogan.
Or it's
No, you have to. He passed laws.
yeah.
The question is with
Oh.
precedent or without laws. You say
Okay, 1.
That's going to be a 1 then.
1. Okay. Okay. Economics is the economic. Okay. Abdul Hamid.
Worse.
Worse. 0. Okay. Atatürk.
I'd say there was a boom.
A boom. There was. Yeah. Okay. Erdogan.
Hard to say again. I read in the paper that he's borrowed lots of money from other countries which he won't be able to pay back.
Okay.
But the way people live in the country, there seems to be a boom.
Okay. So it's somehow between improved and boom. What would you say, Oliver?
Well, for the moment being, it looks good.
Okay, so give him the benefit of doubt?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
2.
2. Okay. Statesmanship. That has to do with getting involved with your leadership with other countries too. Diplomacy, getting alliances, that kind of thing. Okay. 0 is no active one. 1 is active in ethnic or religious matters. 2 active in regional affairs. 3 active in international affairs. Okay. Abdul Hamid.
0.
Yeah.
Atatürk.
I'd say 3. He got on with everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Erdogan.
Regional. I'd say regional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't really
So,
gotten into the European Union, or he hasn't
Yeah.
yet. So it's more okay. Ideology. But in other words, what is there a belief system that they want to get across? Change people's minds in some way, or could that kind of control? None.
no.
Distinctive, but not force on. You don't force it on the populace. Not original, but you force it on the populace.
Hmm.
And 3, original and force on populace. Okay. So we take Hamid.
0.
Good. Is
I
that
thought-
says, okay.
For Abdulhamid, that's gonna be a 0.
I would have leaned toward 1. He pushed
Hmm.
Islam, and he was, he just very, very much into that, and
Okay.
insisted on that, yeah. So we'll give him 1 benefit of the doubt. So, okay. What do we give Atatürk?
That's gonna be a 3, I guess.
3.
Yes.
What do we give Erdogan?
It's not original, but it is definitely a force on the populace.
Okay.
I would say a 2 then.
You say 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Population of country, it takes more to,
Hmm.
if you're ruling Asia or something, it's bigger than,
Yeah.
Haiti or something. Okay. So, with the, okay. Abdul Hamid at the time,
I think that's either a 1 or a 2. The Ottoman Empire was a total of 13 million people at its end.
okay. So, let's say 2 to say it's extended and,
Okay.
okay, we'll give him a 2. With Atatürk, what's the population of Turkey is now, what, about 50?
It's about
70,
It's close to 80, isn't it? 80 million
70
people.
something,
70, 80. In between
70.
70 and 80.
and at his time of rule, what might it have been?
That
I have
would
no
be
idea.
2. Between 10 and 25.
I have absolutely no idea. I don't know when the population of Turkey started to boom.
Okay.
It probably started at this time, but probably is still
My
continuing.
sense is it would be a 3 here at least.
Okay.
Okay, okay. And Erdogan, it would be,
4.
That's
4.
gonna be a 4, yeah.
Okay. Now, let's just out of curiosity, let's add them up. Let's first, what score? Mind you, the scores go, I think, from 1 to 38. 0
Okay.
to 38.
Okay.
3, 4,
Yes.
5, 7, 8. What do you get for Abdul Hamid?
You got a 10 for Abdulhamid.
How much?
10.
10, okay. In the book, he's listed as 11, so we came pretty,
11.
so
Yeah.
we came close, see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Just I'll show, okay. Now, what do we get for Atatürk?
Atatürk. $35.
35?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And
19 for Erdogan.
what do we get with Erdogan? One, twelve, 14. This is an easy way to tell where these rulers stand on the global scale. It's back. You might enjoy in your teaching classes getting to think about how you might objectively, or what applying criteria to judging rulers.
Yeah.
And it's a complex thing. It's not one thing or another. It's broken down into a number of different areas. In the book, I give the rationale for each of them, but
You do.
okay. So I don't think Erdogan would be very happy to be about half of,
Yeah.
and certainly if Abdul Hamid saw our ratings, we'd be in either jail or killed.
I think I'll move back over there so I can get everyone in.
I guess you'd like to, you want to keep these things?
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah,
keep
you can have that.
yours
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is great, and it would be good to do something similar with my students in class, this sort of
This
test.
other friend of mine, who's, I mentioned, who read the book and invited me and so forth, he has done this with colleagues all over, and they enjoy that process. His grandfather, ran with a general in the army under Atatürk, so he was one of the top people. So he is very, very into that. Anyway, yeah.
Yes. One of our problems here is that from which angle you look, or let me say, which side you hold. Like a football game, there are two games, two teams, and you hold one thing. At this point in time in Turkey, it's like a football game. Some people back one team and another group back the other team. So this group, who for some intention, their intentions are different than the intentions Atatürk had for the country, for the future, for a prosperous Turkey, for the future of Turkey. But those people are trying to put forth an argument where Atatürk was a dictator by, say, banning the headscarf or changing the way people dressed, by doing the revolution, or changing the alphabet from Arabic to Latin, that he did this as a dictator, or to turn Turkey into a secular country. The Sultan was the Caliphate, the leader of the Muslim world, and Atatürk, by banning Caliphate, acted as a dictator. What would you say to this? You say, if they were doing this test and doing the points, they would be looking at stuff like this and saying at the end that he's a dictator, that he's stopped the freedom of those people wearing the headscarf or whatever.
Well, okay. First of all, I would say that the notion of political greatness has to do with criteria other than personality traits or drinking or mood and so forth. These are items that involve one's personal life or versus, and we're talking about greatness involving one's achievements out in the world and with others. In my book, confronting these different forms of governments, again, as you point out, correctly so, depends which group you're talking to as to whether they regard this as good or bad. Whether, for example, in what I had to deal with after a while, I came to realize that I had and came up with several caveats to be aware of.
Yeah.
That one of these is that words don't always mean what they say.
Exactly.
And for example, most tyrants, all kinds of leaders will call what they do is democratic. Democracy is supposed to be this great standard. Well, there are all funny kinds of democracies. I mean, in this country, which is a bastion of democracies, blacks could not vote for a long time. They were slaves in a democracy. In the beginning of, with Pericles in ancient Greece, the founder of democracy, slaves could not vote and women could not vote. Now, what kind of democracy is that? Women did not get the vote in this country until around near 1950s and all kind of laws. We have a democracy. Democracies mean rule of the majority. But we now have a president who did not win a majority. And you have gerrymandering here and all kind of restrictions. Okay, so people bandy words around that to suit their purpose here. Democracy is sacrosanct. Anything, if you like what the leader does and he seems to be listening to you, then it's democracy. If you don't like it here, then it's a dictatorship. So, okay. So there's the issue that there's a lot of fuzziness with these words, and there's no such thing that we know of as pure democracy, where each individual is heard. Also, there are places where everybody votes, and no question about it, but they're told what to vote, and they know that if they don't vote, they'll go in jail. So is that a democracy? You gotta vote. Okay. The other thing that comes across is that most of these governments have to have constitutions here. But it's as if, found this nation on the basis of this constitution that's written by forefathers or so forth. Then afterward, you have to set up panels of judges because they can't agree on what the words mean in the Constitution, or they're all kind of interpretations. To get real on political greatness, the fact of the matter is you can't be a great ruler without changing the attitudes of people. And that is, and you do everything possible, rulers who are lauded in history, do everything possible to change the attitudes according to what their belief system is, and for, quotes, the good of the people. Now that, the good of the people depends on the people. Some people think the good of the people is bad for them here. But my sense, the thing to be aware of is that, yes, there are different, there's dictatorships, there's monarchy, there's democracy, there's they're visionaries. In my study, I put Atatürk in none of those categories. I put him as a visionary here. And that term doesn't necessarily mean bad or good in a way. It depends if you believe it. If you believe in him and believe in what he's doing, it's good. If you don't believe it, it's bad. Mao Zedong had what, rated way up there too, and what he was able to do, I mean, phenomenally, change an entire, country and bring them into a communist one, total different system here. Now, you may disapprove of that, but it's a great achievement here, and the communists would love it. And if you're not communist, you'd say it's horrific in a way. So.
Any other caveats that you noticed?
Let's see if I write some. Okay, another one is that I had with a different label for it. Bad can be good and good can be bad, depending, again, what team you're rooting for, in a way, as you put it. Right. So that's all, it goes across the board here. And I think we've seen it in this election here. Trump versus Clinton, and you can't, one side can't understand the other side, and one side is crazy, stupid, this and that, and back and forth. And I'm sure that's so in almost any country where there are different points of view. Another caveat is that legal rulers aren't always the real rulers. I think we've seen that in Turkey, that there were times when Erdogan was either a premier, and now a president kind of thing, and it's kind of shifted. We see this in Russia with Putin, for example. He's gone from one position to another, and is able to control what previously had been either a prime minister or president, that regardless of the role he's in.
Yeah.
We see that in Iran with the president, who is ostensibly the leader, but he looks to religious overseer here, who pretty much controls who gets appointed to this and that and so forth. So sometimes there's what is known as the power behind the throne, and a number of women pretty much have controlled political power, even though it's not been acknowledged that they have, in a way, and they do it through influencing the ostensible ruler here, who's a man.
Yeah.
So. Okay, one caveat on this: all rules have exceptions, and all exceptions have rules too. So, looking at government and people and different nations and different interests and so forth, those people who just believe that there's only one right way have a limited scope, and that other depends who's looking at it that way. So.
Yes. Okay, next question.
Go ahead, yeah.
I don't know if you'd like to comment about the Arab Spring and what's happening in the Middle East. Now, I know you're not a politician, you're just researching the academic side of leadership and political greatness. But we've seen leaders like Saddam and Gaddafi in the Middle East, such as we see Erdogan now. And then we've seen Saddam and Gaddafi be killed, and Mubarak in Egypt. What's happening in those countries? How much were they dictators, Saddam and Gaddafi and Mubarak? And is there less dictatorship in those countries now? Gaddafi is one of those controversial figures. When I was a young student at university in the UK, I knew nothing about Gaddafi because there wasn't internet and so much press. But I had some Palestinian friends who were studying at university, doing PhDs with the scholarships Gaddafi was giving them, support, financial support from Gaddafi. Then I used to hear good things about Gaddafi, such as he had everyone in his country in Libya own their own houses and flats without paying money, and petrol was very cheap, and they all owned their own cars, sort of thing. But then I started reading in the press that he's a real bad dictator too. So, what's happening in those countries?
Hard to say from my standpoint, and I don't what is happening probably has to do with outside interference. Unfortunately, I think our government has been involved in the political aspects of countries in our hemisphere, in South America, the Middle East now, and notions as to how things should be. I don't know how much that is playing a role. I know they've, in many countries, undermined the current, for example, the Shah of Iran, for example, who supplanted a, quote, democratically elected president.
Yeah.
So even with a democratic president, we, for probably economic reasons, I don't know what was all about that, overthrew that and installed a puppet government there. Gaddafi has probably made the mistake of not agreeing with some power brokers elsewhere. I don't know how much input that involved. My sense is yes, he probably could be classified as a dictator, but by the same token, he probably did some good things too, and dictators often do good things. Again, those words are bandied about that you cannot say dictator equals bad in a way. You cannot say, quote, democratically elected equals good in a way. Yeah, there's just a lot we do not know, and then there's the whole economic scene. We know that limited resources and increase in population cause problems. You know about Malthus and so forth. You know about Malthus, the Malthusian law and so forth. Well, if you look at the resources in a country over time, it tends to increase arithmetically. We have more production of this from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so forth. If you look at population, it tends to change almost geometrically, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so forth. So the gap between increased population and resources here widens and widens. The wider it gets, the more unstable the society becomes here. Just more and more people commit, more and more people vying for limited resources.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue of world population and resources needs to be taken into account to understand the stability or instability of a society. If everybody's getting, Saudi Arabia, where everyone was getting some of the monies from the oil production, and it was shared with people, and they had cars and their own place and so forth, they had a monarchy there that is absolute rule in a way, which is not democratic, the farthest thing, and people are happy. With now that the oil prices are coming down and so forth, more instability in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read any of Will or Ariel Durant's history books? They wrote probably the most comprehensive history books, 10 volumes, covering all nations since the beginning of time, called The History of Civilization. Okay. Now, they published one little book after all these volumes, this thin, and it's called The Lessons of History. And one of the lessons of history is that as long as there are humans, there will always be war. And they record since the beginning of human history, like 3,700 years ago, only about 300 of those years, or something like that, there have been no recorded wars. That means at least 95% of the time in human history, people are killing each other or plotting to do it. And have we learned from it over time for all of this? I'm not sure we have.
Still killing.
You remember, you know how many deaths reported in the 20th century?
Yeah.
How many?
I don't remember the number, but still killing.
Okay,
The Syrians,
how many
the
deaths
Iraqis,
would you
In the
say?
20th century?
20th century.
Africans.
I don't know, but there's quite a lot of deaths,
Over
millions.
200 million deaths in the 20th century. And that's not counting the wounded, too.
Yeah.
Which you multiply by 10, and so 20th century here, over 200 million deaths. So, yes, it's a shame, but part of the problem is not just the nature of the government, it's the nature of humans, too, that we have to watch out for. Us against them.
Yeah.
Different ideologies, any differences you can kill for or justify here.
Governments are people too.
Yeah.
So it is
Yes.
people.
Yeah. Okay, on
Ready
that
for
pleasant
lunch?
note, sweetie.
Okay.
Okay then.